In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
That was President Eisenhower's farewell address in 1961. He was urging Americans to embrace a new way of thinking about their future and the country's place in the world. And now, two top staffers in the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are arguing that we need to do it. A position paper titled A National Strategic Narrative was written by two active duty military officers, Captain Wayne Porter of the United States Navy and Marine Colonel Mark Mickleby. They argue that America can no longer control the world through military might and must lead through economic strength and the moral power of example. This paper represents a call to action by active military members for America to embrace progressive values like investing in education and infrastructure while rejecting fear and intolerance. Joining me to talk about this tonight is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former Chief of Staff at the State Department under Colin Powell. He's currently a visiting professor at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. Good evening, Colonel Wilkerson. Great to have you with us tonight.
Good to be here.
How widely accepted do you think this paper is? And does it speak for many in the military brass? What do you think?
Absolutely. It speaks for the brains. Ever since Goldwater-Nichols was passed in 1986, the creme de la creme, the very best of the military, has gone to the Joint Staff, and the very best of that best has gone to the Chairman's office. This is Admiral Mullen, who himself is no shrinking violet from brain power. He's a very cerebral chairman, thinks about these kinds of problems. This is his strategic brain trust. And this is, your lead-in was perfect. This is very much Eisenhower. This is right back to his 53 speech, for example, back to his 60 speech to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, wherein he said, our national security is not tanks and ships and planes. It's not even the brave and courageous men in our armed forces. It is our economic might, it's our financial soundness, and it's ultimately the prosperity and feeling about liberty and democracy that the American people have. That's where our real national security is embedded.
Colonel, what can you tell us about the two authors?
These gentlemen are people who've thought about this hard. They've been associated with the Smart Growth Initiative at the New America Foundation, where I'm working, merely as observers. But they're very smart, and they put this together in an attempt to give at least that view that the Defense Department has about its own self-interest. After all, you cannot drive tanks, sail ships, and fly airplanes if you don't have the gas, the fuel, the money, ultimately the economy underneath you to do it. So it's enlightened self-interest if you want, but they're also smart people. They're Americans. They're sworn to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
It just jumps out, I think, at people who read it. We're doing things we should not be doing, and we need to change, or this country is in jeopardy. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair assessment. And others have said, well, why are these people saying this? They're military. They're supposed to be quiet. The civilians are supposed to say these things. Well, that ought to give you some indication of the desperation of the situation. If the military has to speak out in this more or less civilian vein. After all, they're citizens too.
And to implement this kind of thinking by lawmakers, this is the challenge, is it not?
It is. It is to get this bickering to stop and to concentrate on what the essence of the problem is, which is restoring the economic power of the United States. And you don't do that by bickering around the margins, as both parties are doing right now, I'm sad to say.
Where do you think President Obama stands on this? Do you think he would embrace this from what you've seen of him, that he would, and if he did, or any president did, how would you start a path that would parallel what's written here?
I think he does. I have to think he does. I have to think if there were a Republican president in there, other than George W. Bush, I must add quickly, he probably feels the same way. The difficulty is doing it. The difficulty is shifting, for example, from roads and automobiles to high-speed, long-distance rail and light city rail. The difficulty is moving people into urban and exurban areas instead of going on with this sprawl, which is absolutely unsustainable. The difficulty is in making the American people resilient with regard to terrorist attacks and not dedicating so many billions and billions of dollars to a bunch of people who managed to kill 3,000 Americans, but after all, we kill double or triple that many on the highway every month.
Yeah.
This is a question of getting our priorities right and then going to work on them.
And it's coming from the military. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up.